It sounds like a 747. I'm not saying this is always the case, but there's always that chance that it could be a TR-3B. It could even, well, of course, there's a new model now. The old model has already been, is far outdated. They got the new Aurora, which is I have it somewhere with the classification, but it's far more advanced. I mean, we're talking anywhere in the world in under 12 minutes.
Okay, but okay, I'm assuming you're not an expert on military aircraft, but at the same time you rode in this vehicle. So can you describe anything about its capability in terms of, you know, in other words, could it, at that time, and we're talking, I don't know, what year?
I know what you're talking about. We're talking, I mean, I rode those things off and on from 1999 until, you know, 2005. Okay. So, and I know what you're referring. Directional, yes. Multi-directional. They could move any way because of the.
And what about in terms of the speed? Do you know how fast it could go? You know, could it go faster than light speed?
I know that on some occasions, I remember going from the United States to Azerbaijan, that country, and we reached it in under 30 minutes. And that's pretty much on the other side of the globe.
Yeah. So these abductions that you were doing, were they, in other words, you said terminate or bring them back?
That was two of the categories under the conditions of, yes, termination. Well, a termination was not a military abduction. Termination was a termination. The whole point of the abduction was to take them alive, bring them back for whatever purpose. But there were also a scope of things. There's also, you know, it goes on to, and again, I described this in this other interview I just did, where you're talking about occasionally people slip through the cracks. Children, even adults. Every human, every baby that's born in the United States, DNA sample is taken. That DNA sample then goes into a network. That network is then can be accessed by special projects. Through decades and decades, they have managed to where, knowing the history of the family lineage, they can tell on the basic DNA level the possibilities of what this child is capable of. It's not a perfect system though. Occasionally, children do slip through the cracks. So let's just use an example. Someone hears about maybe a child with telepathy or doing telekinesis, or even, you know, you hear of a little girl that's in a shopping mall that screams and all of a sudden windows shatter. Well then, one of the many special projects takes interest and they want that girl, they want that young woman, they want that man. So they say, okay, go get him. If my team selected to do so, we're given the information, we go, we find this person, we bring them back to whatever designated facility. Now they may not be gone forever. It could be because you have what's called subjects of opportunity. They're taken, they're used for whatever purpose, we give them false implanted memories, slip them something, they're returned back. And maybe we never use them again. Maybe we decide we need them in a month. Or not for years. That's one of many.
Did you dress up a certain way? Did you, were you working with ETs?
Yes. There were three conditions. Now you had actual plain daylight abductions where you could either be masked as like a police or some kind of official member, and when you draw them into a situation to grab them, or I could be dressed like this. Obviously I didn't have the earrings or as many of the tattoos at the time, but we would use several different drugs. One of them was called scopamine. Scopamine I could literally take and dip it on the edge of a toothpick. And let's say you're my target, Gary. I've tracked you down, you're at a cafe. I can either wait till you get to go use the restroom and I can put some of this minute amount in your coffee, or I can literally actually bump into you and rub it on your skin. I then wait for it to come into effect. Then I walk over to you, and this is how this drug works. It's very dangerous. I say, hi Carrie, I'm Aaron. Now, you don't know me at all. You've never met me, but you react, you say, hi. I said, well, listen, come with me. You come with me happily. You pay your check, you grab your purse, you come with me willingly. I take you in my car or in your car or whatever. I take you to a facility, then whatever's been designated for you happens. If you are returned back, you're returned back and you have no memory. That's what the drug does. It's a very volatile, very dangerous drug, and it was one of the, you could say it was one of the drugs of my choice when I was doing abductions.
Okay, so were you the leader of these groups?
The team that happened after 2001, yes, I was the team leader.
Why were you the team leader? Do you know?
Because I was really good at my job.
What does being good at that job mean?
I had a very high success rate. It was above 97%.
Okay, and did you have you didn't have the earrings and the tattoo at that time?
No, I didn't have the earrings. I didn't have the tattoos on my neck. I didn't have them on my hands, but I did have a lot on my arms. You were talking about uniform. I don't know if I sent you a picture of the uniform that I wore, and I was able to obtain parts of my old uniform, one of my old uniforms through some other means. Black gloves, full black turnout gear, flag vest, hood, goggles, whole 9 yards. We weren't allowed to wear watches. You weren't allowed to wear anything that would separate you, even no markations, no American flag, no U.S. Coast Guard, no nothing. When I was actually on facility at Pro-C, we did have a certain symbol that we wore, which was the Seagate symbol. But so we were completely black. We were of non-denomination. I did have 2 females on my team. When they were suited up, you couldn't even tell that they were women.
Okay, but you can't take somebody and rub them with this drug in being suited up like that, right?
No, that in that uniform was strictly night operations. That was done for night ops.
Okay, and what is a night op?
A night op would be, well, let's use this place for example. You're here, you're at home, you're asleep, and the moment of opportunity, we've received the green light. So if this place had an alarm system, we would obviously disable it. I would have, and for this kind of operation, I'd probably only bring maybe a couple more people, maybe 2 or 3 other people on my team. We would have some come up the balcony this way. We would have, and then come up through the front entrance. We would go into where you were asleep. We would shoot our cocktail into you, which would be a combination of either scopolamine, GBH, LSD, or BZ, or one of, and there's reasons for that. If we wanted to make it appear that was an alien abduction, it would create a hallucinogenic effect. And then we would carry you out. We would lock everything up, take you to the vehicle, the craft, and then we'd be gone.
What about the neighbors and dogs and things like that?
Oh, we weren't concerned with that.
Why?
Because we could get in and get out without them noticing.
Okay.
Complete in and out without any sound. You know, even being able to, you know, you're talking about even picking a lock at night. Dogs will even sleep through that. I mean, you can be that quiet.
Okay, so you were going on these operations that you were calling my labs, military abductions, and you said you're working with ETs. Which
Grace.
ETs? Grace?
Grace.
Okay, and do you recall this, or
No,
is
I do recall some of this. These are things that I had a little bit difficulty coming to terms with, or even accepting, no more than a couple years ago. And again, and a lot of these memories were reconfirmed when I was called back to duty in 2008, when I still didn't know who I was, and all of a sudden I've got these military personnel who are taking me to Camp Pendleton, where I'm meeting with this general, and he literally opens up what he had of a dossier of me, and they're showing operations, they're showing images, they're showing things that I was a part of. They showed me that on my NSA file it says, Petty Officer, 2nd Class Aaron E. Mccollum, serial number 13-03957, killed in action 1999. So according to whoever doesn't need to know about me, I technically have died in action at some point in 1999.
But you're still running around town with this name and so on and so forth. Okay, I mean, because I also want to address why you've been allowed to get away with what you're doing.
I haven't entirely been allowed to get away with what I've been doing. I have received threats. My certain family members have received threats, and I myself have had attempts on my life as recently as, that had to have been 5 months ago when I was hit by a car at not full speed obviously, but the witnesses said that the car was going 35, 40 miles an hour and it hit me dead on. And
Were you in a car at the time it hit you?
No, I was walking. It hit me straight on. I was going across a crosswalk where the light was go for me, and the car peeled around the corner and then came up, and it just happened so fast, and I flew over the car, hit the ground. I blacked out. I woke up in the ER, and with many times before, the doctor sat there and said, I have no idea how you don't have any broken bones. You don't have any stitches. I didn't even have really any bruises. I pretty much walked away from it. They took me because they didn't know who I was, and it was, standard procedure, obviously. The ambulance shows up, they put me in the neck brace. I do remember telling them, no, I'm fine. They're like, no, please. So I'm just like, okay, I'll let you guys go along with this.
Did you question at any point what you were doing?
No. You don't question when you're grown up to never question. You just do. You just act. You see, people like Duncan, myself, and even another former teammate, Axe, I'll refer to her as that. You're raised and you're conditioned through even electroshock therapy of splitting the alters where now, of course, if you do an operation in an altar, which I did many that obviously I don't remember, but I know because of missing time, you're robotic. But even in the person that you see now that actively did black operations, you don't question, you don't feel anything. You're not allowed to. And if you do, well, you better not show it, because then you're going to get reprogrammed. I've been able to get in contact, well, I was in contact with a number of people that were on my team. And after contact was made, suddenly these people disappeared. Or I would go from trying to get information out of them because they maybe remember a little bit more than me, and then the next day contacted me and they're going, I don't know who you are, please stop contacting me.
Okay, yeah.
So I have been completely, they've completely taken me out. Now you said, how am I able to survive of all that? That's a whole nother story we could get into another time, but let's just say that I had a guy show up when I was living in Phoenix. He knew everything about me. He said that he worked for the company that's telling me CIA or something even more further, and he disagreed with what took place with me, and he was the guy responsible for setting up what is basically my pension, the money that I get now. He came and he went. I don't know who he was, some good Samaritan, but without him, I don't know what I would be able to do.
Let's fast forward now, because
Okay.
we've talked about the military abductions that you were going on, and that was during what years?
It actually happened off and on from 1999 to 2005. That was one of my many collateral duties.
Okay, but
I was a multi-mission person.
I understand. And then you did work with Project Seagate.
Yes.
So now we need to kind of go in that direction.
Okay, let me just give a little bit of history of Project Seagate first. And that'll help people understand. About 30 years ago, the Navy and NOAA, which is the National Oceanographic Atmospheric Administration, who does a lot of research on the water, they were doing some surveying in the area of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, that whole area, some water surveying. Why they were doing that, I don't have the details, but I know that they were. And they had ground penetrating radar that they were using. They found something. They found something big underneath the seabed off the west coast of Puerto Rico. So excavation commenced, and they found what was to appear to be a very large abandoned facility, not of human technology. Now, at this time, of course, the United States government already had a treaty with certain extraterrestrial beings, with the Greys, with the reptilians, and even a few other that had taken interest. So, working with them, they were able to uncover and they had to reverse engineer it, because even today, they're still not sure who or what built this.
So it wasn't a gray base?
No, absolutely not. No, this was not gray technology. But they were able to figure out through trial and error and a lot of reverse engineering.
Okay, and you know this information how?
I know this information from 2 people that I worked with prior to, and 1 person that was an operator. An operator by means, this was a person who actually was a scientist, more of an engineer, that was on facility.
Meaning worked at this facility
Worked at
once
the base.
it was activated? This
Yes.
underwater base?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And the underwater base, is that what you call Project Seagate, or that's called,
Well,
is there another
Project
number?
Seagate was the name of the project, the operations that were ran there. Think of it like, okay, you know you've got MK Mark Ultra, that has many, many sub-projects. Project Seagate itself had several sub-projects.
So this was a sub-project?
The base, this was a sub-project that had sub-projects itself. This is what makes it so complicated, because a project is designed like Montauk, and then they discover all these other things that they do, so they branch off. This is something they do purposely because it's hard to track. The base itself was actually called PROSEA, P-R-O-S-E-A. That's just what that's what they called it. I know that there was another name. There was like a serial number code for the base, but I don't remember what that was.
Okay, and this was under the water.
It wasn't. Okay, there are now. They have parts of it that are on the seabed floor, but most of the facility is actually underneath the seabed. So it's an underwater / underground facility.
Okay. Now, when you say it was called PROSEA, where did you get that information? Did you remember it, or was it told
That
to
was
you?
what I was shown as part of the dossier I was shown back in 2008 when I was being recalled. So they figured, you got to recall a guy. I'm sitting there really freaking out. We're going to show this guy who he really is.
Did you have no memory when you were freaking out at that point, or did you have some?
I
memory?
had what I only thought were hysterical hallucinations. I really thought this is why, which I haven't talked about this much, but you know, I made an attempt to kill myself in 2006 because I just had it. I'd had it with not sleeping, with waking up, with these night terrors, screaming, sweats, flashbacks, coming in and out of consciousness, waking up in one city, or you know, showing up in a different city. It was chaos. My life was
Okay.
chaos.
How many altars do you think you have, or do you know?
I'll tell you what I've been told, and I'll tell you what it's been actually factually logged. I have actual witnesses, and several more whistleblowers that have talked on Project Camelot, and others have done other people that I worked with in the past. I have had about 12 separate altars that were witnessed. What I was told, is that I have somewhere in the number of 36 separate altars. But I haven't been able to get enough substantial evidence, but I have substantial evidence on 12.
You're going into this base. What was happening at the base, and how were you involved?
Okay, here's where things get a little interesting. The base had sub-projects. One of the sub-projects, which was part of what is known as the Omega program, and the Omega program does a multitude of things. It creates soulless beings, so I'm talking about cloning humans that do not have a consciousness. They are basically a host. They are a shell that can be used to put the consciousness of another person in there. That's used for
And this is
whole-
the same Omega project that was documented on the Heather material.
Yes.
Okay, and you've connected with Ben. So
I've
we
connected
can-
with Ben, and you could say I've connected with Heather via Ben.
Okay.
That's a whole nother interesting thing, because Heather has a direct connection to Project Seagate that I had No idea about.
Okay. And we want to talk about that. So at
Sure.
some point, we're going to diverge to talk about that in a
Okay.
little more depth. But at this point, let's answer this question so far as to what was going on there and what was your involvement.
Okay, so the Omega project, which the Omega is again a classification for genetically engineered beings. The one that Dr. Deagle was on was with the Human Jackal program. Okay, and that was basically a super soldier program where they were combining human and jackal DNA, which jackal pound for pound are one of the strongest animals. Project Seagate adopted an aquatic side of it, where they were combining human and dolphin DNA to create, you could say, an aquatic type super soldier who had the abilities of telepathy, echolocation, being able to hold the breath for an extremely long time underwater, being even better at adapting to cold. Dolphins themselves can actually change their body heat depending on if they go up to the Arctic or if they're down in the equator.
Okay. So,
So that was
are
one
we
of the
talking
projects.
about, you're saying genetically engineered, are they using human and dolphins, but are they ending up to look more like which?
There was a wide range. Initially, the project, as in with a lot of genetic manipulation, they had a lot of failures where you get things like the whole thing that I really, it disgusts me how they label it, the pictures of the Panamanian monster, which is not a monster. I think I showed you those pictures, and those pictures, if not, I'll get them to you, are of what you could say more of not a desired creation due to the project. Occasionally underwater field exercises would happen and one would get away. This is when they expanded to where all exercises were done at a huge sea pool, is what they call it, that's actually in the bay, so that they weren't actually out in the open. They were more in an enclosure.
But are they looking human?
Well, they do two models. They do a model that looks closer to dolphin,
Right.
and they have a model that's much more closer to human. Yeah.
Okay. And what was your involvement?
My involvement with that was several reasons. One, I worked with the actual full-blooded dolphins because part of the program was I was selected in a very small group of people, part of the Super Soldier program, to learn certain traits that dolphins could do. One of them, which I think I talked about in the first interview, was echolocation synchronicity. What does that mean? That means that basically it means that the dolphins, which were more or less the instructors, were teaching humans how to do echolocation. This is not fantasy. This is something that really happens. In fact, it can happen in normal state. There's a 5-year-old blind boy who just made it on the news a couple weeks ago, who his mother was taking him out with dolphins, and the dolphins taught him how to echolocate. Now this boy doesn't need a cane. He walks around and he does echolocation all the time.
Okay, but echolocation is what? Is
Echolocation is, you could say, biological radar. They put out a frequency, it bounces off an object, it comes back, and therefore they can measure how big it is and how far away it is. It's what sonar is.
Okay. All right, so you're saying you worked with dolphins to do what?
To learn how to do echolocation, and as well, I also was one of the... All right, let's get into the real bread and butter of Project Seagate then. Now, there was an alien side of things that were done. We can talk about that later. There was the Super Soldier aquatic program with the dolphin-human hybrids, but then there was the real thing. The real aim of Project Seagate was that there's a portal.
Okay.
It is a portal that can be used. It was such a unique portal that, as far as I've been told, it's the only one on the planet. At least it's the only active one on the planet, as far as I know, because I don't recall being to any other ones. This portal can be used for interdimensional travel, off-planet travel, and under the right conditions, when it's set up right, can be used for time travel.
Okay, okay.
Now, you're asking, I know, and I'm getting that, sorry. What was my role? The team that I was with, which was called the Sentinels, which was a team of very highly trained people that had abilities to adjust to water in certain ways, because the portal is actually underwater. Now, these Seagates that are located in other places also are underwater. What they had to do initially, about 20 years ago, they had sent some people through, but they weren't returning. And they had everything set up right. To talk about I have a schematic, but to talk about the science behind it, I don't really know. I know that, there was a certain room that was called the dome room, which was the room for creating the coordinates. They had these remote viewers that had another role playing it. They sent drones through the portal, and the drones had, through taking pictures, had discovered that the people on their side had died, sometimes violently. It was not because of a malevolent race. We're not the only planet that has water, but water on different planets has different characteristics, different chemical breakdown, different chemical makeup. So what they started doing was they had these drones that were bringing in samples of this water, and now what they have there, which they've had there it was there when I was already there, they had what was called the acclimation room, where you had tanks of water. This is why it'd be good at some point for you to interview Axe, my counterpart, because Axe was part of all of this, and she will give further in depth on some things. The water was of different characteristics, and they would place dolphins and sometimes humans, not the desired dolphins, maybe rejects or humans that were my labs, into this water, see how they would react. People like me, people like Axe, they found were kind of anomalies. We could acclimate to any water. So let's just get to the point. Myself, Axe, and a few others were used to jump through this for more high priority missions.
Okay, missions going to what? Other dimensions? Going time traveling elsewhere in the solar system?
Yes,
the universe?
going to part of this facility was also worked in correlation with the naval galactic fleet, and even
Space Command.
the Space Command, which there's a lot of people involved in Space Command. I think the last I heard there was about 600,000 humans, Earth humans, that are part of Space Command, that all have that are part of Majestic and Cosmic.
Okay, well, last you heard from, how did you hear that information?
I heard that from, actually, it was, it's someone that I heard it in a recent interview. I can't remember the name of the person. It'll come to me, maybe even after the interview, I figure, but there's someone, one of your whistleblowers, had mentioned this sometime about a year ago.
Okay, well, it might be the Han Solo individual that we haven't even released the interview yet, but I don't quite know. Maybe that was related to you by one of the other people.
I know it was related through that means, but that's a year old information.
Okay, so you were used to time travel and go on operations where?
All over the place. And this is why. Okay, one of the reasons why Duncan, Opinion, and Axe and I wanted to have a full interview was so that there was some better cooperation, because it's just me talking. It's better if you have other people. There were operations that had been done in Cambodia back in the late 60s that I have memory of being a part of, that Duncan has memories of being a part of, and that Axe have memories of being a part of, and that even Dave Corso has memories of being a part of.
Right, but technically you weren't born then.
Oh no, I wasn't. I was born in '78. according to what I was told and what records I have.
Okay.
Do I have memories of being off-world? Yes. Do I remember exactly where they were? No. Am I working on to find that out? Yes. But it takes time. I'm actually working on what's kind of known as a metaphysical psychic detox, something that was developed specifically for me, which has been opening up a lot of memories and a lot of other unique things. My abilities, I would say, my special relationship with water has been increasing. Everything from someone watching me, someone that you've met, watching me put my hand over a pot of water and a bolt of, like, I don't want to say a bolt, but it was definitely like about an inch away and a thing of electricity shot into my hand. Another incident where I was in an alternate state, where again, another one of your whistleblowers witnessed, where I had my hand in a bowl of water and this dark matter came out, and then suddenly Duncan is not under this attack that he was under. Carrie, I've had since the first time you and I spoke, I've had so many things come to surface that, I mean, God, we could sit here for 8 hours and maybe get into some of it.
If you could sum it up, what is the military doing down there? What's the purpose?
Okay, 3 main things. 1, the Dolphin human hybrid program, where they're still creating, they're still developing, they're still coming up with advancements and make no mistake, they're building an army, and they're of ones that look more dolphin and ones that look more human. They also, with the Project Seagate portal, they use some of these hybrids they make are without souls, so they're used through these remote viewers, the 10 remote viewers that sit in what's called the row of chairs, where they can use them for more expendable missions, where if the body itself gets damaged, they can actually bring back the consciousness of that human into its real body.
Oh, right. And we talked about this in the last interview. In other words, but
I really don't like to compare movies to reality, but that Avatar movie
yeah,
is not out of this world technology.
Yeah.
That is happening right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not just Project Seagate. There are other sub-projects that are using the same technology, just for different purposes.
Right.
The base is also, there's a section of Pro-C that is ran and operated by Greys and Reptilian, and not just them, but a few other races as well that have, you could say, decided to jump on the team. They are doing a lot of different projects because Project Seagate is also connected to, there is an underground maglev that goes to Autek, which is at Bimini Island. There is also 2 small satellite entrances. They call them satellite entrances. They're small, like hubs. One that's located in St. Croix off of what's called Rainbow Beach, and another one in Water Island in St. Thomas. That actually relates to part of what Duncan was part of back in 2003, 2004. But what a lot of people don't know, and it's only been mentioned on a few occasions, is there's actually a total of 12 underground bases in the Caribbean. But only 2 of them are ran and where humans are allowed. The other 10 are strictly all-exclusive extraterrestrials.
Okay, what about the one off of Catalina? Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am.
Do you think you've been in it?
You know, I've been to Catalina. I remember being to Catalina when I was a kid. In fact, I recently found out from my sister that she and my brother, when they were, I think, in junior high, so what's that, like 12, 13, they both were shipped off at separate times to Houston for space camp. But they don't really remember space camp. When I got to that age, I was shipped off to Catalina Island for some kind of marine biology scuba camp thing. That was like the equivalent of space camp, but for that. I remember going to Catalina, but I don't remember what took place there or leaving.
Okay.
But I do know that there is, because a lot of USO, underwater or unidentified submersible objects, are seen off of the Catalina. But here's another thing that people may not be aware of that see this. Puerto Rico is one of the major hotspots for UFO and USO sightings in the world. 95% of these sightings that get reported never make it to the media. Because Puerto Rico, off of Puerto Rico, and that whole area in the Caribbean, you're talking 12 underground facilities, and only 2 are ran by the United States, OPTEC and ProSea.
Okay. And the other ones are run by off-world
Various off-world
ETs?
beings. They're not all gray reptilian. There's various ones. Several are benevolent.
Okay, well, describe one.
Well, one is the Syrians.
Okay, and what do they look like?
The Syrians are kind of a bluish, a very kind of a light bluish look to them. But then there's other ones that have are more of a, it's like a bluish, tannish color. They range from 5'4" to about my height, 6'2". They do have a wide range of hair. They're not like you see in these pictures where you have these pictures on the internet where every race is tall blondes. You know, oh, here's a picture of John, oh, he's tall blonde. Oh, he's a Palladian, he's tall blonde. That's not the case at all. One of the other groups is a group that's not well known, that's Lyran. And then the other ones range from, there is one that's grays.
Right.
There's there's another one that's actually Arcturian.
Okay, but are they humanoid? The ones you've seen?
The ones I've seen are humanoid, as in bipedal humanoid, yes. But Arcturians aren't exactly humanoid, because they they prefer to stay in kind of the 5th density, but they can move up densities. And
okay, so you were exposed, I'm assuming, to these beings as well.
On various occasions, yes.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that I always worked with them, but you would see them. Specifically at the base that I was at, they had their own section that was, you know, people talk about majestic clearance and cosmic clearance. Well, the ETs don't care about, or you show up and say, well, I've got majestic clearance. So, they were working on a whole different scope of things that I only got to see part of it on a few times. And a lot of it was working with, a lot of it was with the ocean and with doing genetic modifications of certain sea life.
Okay, but I guess I'm not clear on what you actually did.
Okay, yeah, I know, because we got kind of off track. Let me just put it this way. My team, when things went wrong, and it was on the level of cosmic or majestic clearance, on the cosmic clearance level, we're talking, you know, space fleet level, whether it was someone needed to be terminated, more of a diplomatic issue had come around, someone needed to be taken, or a wide range of things that really fall under the black ops scope, my team was called to do that.
Okay, but in the sea base you're talking about?
Yeah, in the sea base.
Okay, going on operations in this world?
Not just this world, all over. Again, you know, I know this sounds really weird, and it's really hard to, it's really hard for me to still explain. I'm able to explain better now than if I had during the first interview because of things I've been working on. But okay, think of it like when Project Pegasus was, you know, first activated, and people were found and used strictly that had the makeup to be able to travel from here to Mars. Now, that was done for a lot of reasons, for colonizing, for gathering samples, for just experimentation.
Okay.
But projects like that were also used for more of gain, more of sometimes on certain colonies a situation would happen and it needed to be taken care of, and they needed the properly trained people to take care of that situation, to terminate that person, One memory I have, I don't know where it was at, but there was a group of 5 scientists. And these 5 scientists had decided to be non-compliant. And the order was to terminate them, and they are off-world. My team was sent to do so.
Okay, when you say off-world, where off-world?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I really don't. Listen, I get fragments of memories. Maybe in time things will come. This was another reason why I'm working closely with Axe on a lot of this, because Axe has memories of things that she was a part of that I wasn't necessarily part of, but we have right now compiled, which I have put away on a safe hard drive, probably about 1,000, at least 1,000 different correspondence, documents, and other things, pictures, that at some point I would like to get together, which will paint a better picture of what Project Seagate and what we actually did is all about.
Were you leaving your body at all?
No. Okay, I should say this wasn't part of the Omega project that used soulless beings. I physically went.
Okay.
And this wasn't like, I believe Andrew Psagio says in Project Pegasus that they actually couldn't wear metal. In this case, we could wear all of our gear. We would go in this type of submersion suit under the water so that when we came out of the next level, we could take off that submersion suit and be in our dry gear so that we could carry on with whatever task we had to do.
Okay, did you go to Inner Earth at all?
No, I don't ever recall going to Inner Earth. But I did do an operation in Panama where we were guarding an entrance. There actually is an entrance in Panama to Middle Earth. But
Okay.
that was a side operation because Project Seagate, Pro-C itself, was my base of operations for quite a long time. Even Axe, and at some point it'd be good for you to talk to Axe, because Axe has absolute memory of me being at this facility when I was a child. I don't remember that. She claims, and I believe her because I worked with Axe for many years.
Wasn't she like your runner? Didn't she? Was she like
Her-
kind of like?
Yes, her call sign, which I do remember, was called, and I want people to get this mistaken up with the movies, it was Sky Watcher. She was a remote viewer. She had the ability to go out of body. She didn't always travel with me. When I would do a jump, she would sit in what was called the chair, which I don't remember if I showed you a schematic of the chair, where you had a very powerful remote viewer who could do OBE, out of body experience. And she would basically, she was like my astral reconnaissance. She was my watchful eyes, so that things could be recorded, and they actually were recorded through very highly advanced alien technology, so they would have record of what transpired. Because I didn't always go with a team, sometimes I'd go on solo missions.
These memories that are coming back to you, did they come back to you and cause some kind of psychological breakdown at a certain point?
Oh, yeah.
At what year? Do you know?
When the memories were really coming and they were so vivid that I actually felt like I was in, it was reoccurring. That really started probably about the early part of 2006, maybe February, March.
And at what point were you let go from the service? I mean, I know you're technically actually still on call, and
I'm
they can
technically
call you
still
back.
on call.
But-
It was December 22nd of 2005 when I found myself at the Portland, Oregon airport, not remembering even my own name. It even took me months to relearn how to write. I couldn't do basic math. They had done a complete... Here is the problem. That's something that Duncan, Elaney, Axe, and others are trying to work out. I'll try to be quick. Normally, there's a shelf life with this reprogramming they do, and usually in the 50s or 60s is when it comes back. The thing that nobody can figure out is how so quickly this breakdown of the mental block has happened with me. No one, we've been trying to figure it out. The only suspicion is there's an outside benevolent reason that has caused this for certain reasons that I've not
Okay,
yet.
and you're how old?
31.
Okay, so you're still quite young.
I feel like I'm 100.
I know. So you had to have a trigger event that happened that made your life change such that you ended up not knowing your name at this airport, right? In Oregon.
Yes.
So do you want to address that? How did that happen?
Well, I'll give an explanation, but I really, at this time, I don't want to get into too much detail. There's reasons, because I've been instructed, not by bad people, but I've been instructed. Okay. Axe and I, we were at the facility. This was around maybe June or July of 2005. Normally, when a jump occurs, and a jump is, traveling through the portal at Seagate, it's actually a pretty big operation. You have an operating area, which is kind of like main control, where you have the people that are running, all the electronics, everything. You have another, along the pool where the portal's at, there's 5 chairs on each side that have remote viewers. What exact role they play, Axe can better describe that. I'm really hoping she'll at least do some kind of anonymous transcript with you or something, because she'll add a lot to this. Then you have another person that sits at what's the coordination dome, the chair that's underneath, that is a very strong, usually a bilocation remote viewer, where this dome actually moves in a way to, it's almost like setting a compass to where an waypoint, a destination is calculated, that goes into the system somehow, and then bam, where you're going to jump to. So it's a big process, a lot of people involved. I was given a message of huge importance. Now, I say given a message, you could say message was really overpowered me to where I did something that my entire life I had never done. I went against direct orders. I completely disregarded all directives and disobeyed everything that I'd ever stood for. And I went into almost an autopilot. I had convinced a couple of the operators, a couple of the key players. We kind of activated the Seagate through a skeleton crew. How I convinced them, I don't know. Somehow I did. I know that I was in good standings there, and I was pretty high up as far as who I was. Maybe that had something to do with it. The location that was designated was a place that was pretty much off the grid, had been already years before, came down from those who lived in that area as, this is off limits. You guys want to do whatever else you can, do not come here. If you come here, we're going to shut things down. So, some beings that have definitely a huge influence on what goes on in this galaxy. I went there, something transpired. I was given something. This is the reason why, since 2006, up until just a month ago, I have around 103 separate instances of missing time. Some where I've come back with permanent marks, burn marks. Other ones where I've come back with other things that have occurred, where I've had some very reliable, absolute people confirm what took place. There's information that's in here, that was placed in here, that they're having difficulty getting out because they want it.
You mean the government?
Yeah. It's what's the reason why I've moved so much and I've had such a complicated life, because I can never know when I'm going to be going somewhere and I'm going to wake up on a park bench or somewhere where they just drop me off, because they don't just drop me off home, they'll just drop me off wherever. When I returned from this jump, the government, the high-ranking officials had already found out, obviously. You can't do a jump there without them finding out. So I obviously knew, I knew what was going on. Axe, they had grabbed Axe and they had brought her into the jump room. And that's when things got pretty messy, pretty ugly. I remember telling Axe to get the hell away from me. I didn't really understand what entirely had happened, but I remember that something bad was going down. What happened to Axe after that, I don't know, because I didn't reunite with her. It was just through a miraculous chain of events at the Awaken Aware conference, where it was the first time I had had contact with her since 2005. But I believe that everything happens for a reason, anyways.
Well, did you both recognize each other at that time, or did just one of you?
We both did, like, right away. It was pretty emotional.
And Duncan also recognized you,
Right
isn't
away.
that right? Yeah.
Yeah, and Dave.
Okay,
So let me just say this, so we can wrap this portion up, because there's a lot of details I'm purposely leaving out for reasons we explained off camera. There was a gap, obviously, between June and December. I have zero memory of. I don't know what transpired between June and December 2005. I don't know what happened. But my first memory of this kind of second life, because really I've only been having constant memories besides missing time since December 27, 2005. They did what's called a full memory suppression. And how they do this, they have through psychotropic drugs, electroshock, and some other methods. There are parts of your brain that are not designed to hold memory. What they do is, through this process, is they shift all your memory from one side of the brain into the other. And then they can either leave that blank, or they can put in false implant memories. They decided to leave mine blank. They didn't want me to know anything, not even my own name. This process has a shelf life that is done on purpose. The shelf life, usually between the ages of 50 and 60s, when these men and women, the shelf life in the wall starts breaking down and memories start coming over quickly. Now, everybody in the projects, in these kind of projects, have basically, you could say it's a self-termination program. Just last year, 3 people that were in the project that actually Duncan knew, and I knew one of them. They're no longer with us because they had that breakdown. They couldn't take it. They self-terminated. They killed themselves. I'm getting to a point here with this, so just bear with me because this is kind of a rough subject. This is one of the reasons why I worked so closely with my dad, because that shelf life was breaking down with him now. This is why I'm trying to continue staying in contact with him. In 2006, and I remember it was in July of 2006, the floodgates were starting to open. This is what's strange. This is why it's kind of an anomaly, the fact I'm so young and this broke down. I believe that's from outside influence that are trying to work with me in some way. I'd had enough. And my self-termination program did kick in. Where I was living at was a place where no one knows I was completely off the grid, and I went and I got a bottle of alcohol, and I had somehow gathered quite a collection of narcotics, heavy narcotics. I made my own cocktail and I ingested it. The next morning I wake up at this hospital with an IV in me, not remembering. And here's what the doctor told me. Now, where I was living again, let me say this again real quick. I was at a house that was kind of like a flop house that was in this, it was a gated community, but it was like a flop house. I don't know how I got there. I just went there through a chain of events. The doctor and a couple of nurses told me that I was carried into the hospital by a tall man who then in turn had what little clothes I had in bags in his car. He dropped me off He told the people exactly what drugs were in my system of this cocktail. Now, I didn't have pill bottles. I just gathered them from here and there. And then they grabbed me, they took my stuff. When they turned around, because obviously the nurse needed him to fill out some information, the guy was gone. He never gave his name, nothing. There's no way anybody could have known what I had in my system. The doctor told me I had enough narcotics in my system that I should have put an elephant down. And that was one of the many times I've had doctors say, I don't know how you're still alive. Some would say it's a guardian angel. Some could say maybe it was someone from the project who was watching over me out of concern. I have another theory that's a little more out of this world. But
now I'm getting the impression that you're talking about possibly the very tall beings, the Anunnaki.
I thought that first, but indeed that's not. Well, let's use Arcturian.
Okay.
I've only talked about this a couple times. I don't really talk about it because even I am by nature a soldier who needs tangible things. Even though I've seen a lot of out of this world and been off planet, seen some stuff, for this to happen to me now after being tossed to the wayside, it's hard for me to sometimes even accept. But I get information that's kind of downloaded to me, and I've been getting a lot of recent answers since I've started this detox, and so since I've been law regaining. And a lot of information that's come to me has been revolved around the Arcturians.
Okay.
Still something that I'm working on closely with certain people, but I wasn't even going to be talking about this right now because it's something that's difficult because it's
okay.
one of the, I know it is. I'm in the why me phase right now.
I understand.
Why did this have to happen to me? You know, you put in a lifetime of work that you don't even choose. I didn't ask for any of this. This was chosen for me. And then this happens, and then that happens. Do I get aggravated? Yeah. Am I glad that my self-termination program was interfered with? Absolutely.
Well, actually, I have to say that you had to have chosen all of this as a soul before you came into this body.
I hear that
for a
so many
purpose.
times. I do hear that a lot.
Okay. But at any rate, at some level, you seem to be just beginning to take up your mission on the light side, as I would call it.
It's really just begun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think really the grassroots with it was first contacting you. And then getting a lot of support from Duncan, from Dave, from Jordan Maxwell, from Miriam Delicato, from Axe, and actually quite a few others. My network right now with whistleblowers is pretty big. I mean, Dr. Deagle, Jeff Harvey, Ral Val, who is another person that you should definitely get in contact with. You know who she is.
Okay.
But it really has just begun, and I've only yet to begin because there's so much more that I know that I'm here for into helping others.
Okay. What I want to do now is go back to the Ben Heather situation.
Oh, that was the other thing that we were going to talk about.
Yes. And then we're going to have to wrap this up.
We are, because we're already in tape 3.
Yeah.
I told you I had a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to explain anything about that first? Or you want me to just go right into it?
Okay. I did a radio show interview with Ben Murphy, who was part of the Heather material. He was the contactee who was in contact with Heather, who then basically disappeared, but she worked in a black project as a scientist and was part of basically Project Omega and some other projects. And then in the midst of the interview, something told me to ask Ben whether or not Heather had worked with dolphins. Something came to me, as it does sometimes when I'm doing interviews. I get downloads. And sure enough, that triggered a whole memory sequence for Ben and also for Aaron. And what happened was, after the show, Aaron contacted Ben Murphy, and I'll let Aaron tell the rest.
I listened to that interview in detail, And yes, it definitely, things triggered. And I recognize my triggers very well. I mean, it's, when I listen to something, I don't sweat and I don't panic. So when I start shaking and I start getting cold sweats and I start getting violent flashbacks, gut feeling tells me there's something substantial to this. So I emailed Ben and I explained to him what it was, and then I gave him just a very brief history, background, not of growing up, because he was already aware of some of that, but of my involvement with Project Seagate. And the letter I got, which I think would be good, and I will make sure you get another copy of it.
Okay.
The letter he sent me was basically him dictating what Heather said, and the details of her involvement with working with Dolphins on the Super Soldier program, which is under the Omega Project, were uncanny. In fact, there's no way what she details in that letter she couldn't have just made up without absolutely knowing something. We had a lot of white coats, scientists, also known as operators. We had a lot that would be contracted out. Again, Project Seagate had special contracts with facilities like AUTEC and San Diego and various places, all water-based facilities with Dolphins. Heather, I believe, I would say I'm 99% sure, based on what she said and my instinct, that she was in some way a researcher, a scientist, a white coat for Project Seagate. I am going to, eventually when I get the website put up, that's one of the info, I'm going to have a whole section devoted to Project Seagate. But I will definitely get you a copy of the letter so you can post that, and then I will turn and post it on what I'm using now with my Facebook. I can't stand Facebook, but it's a means to an end, I guess. But
Okay.
there is a possibility, because that is a close network, Project Seagate. Everyone pretty much knew everybody on some level, whether you recognized who they were or what they did. So there's now a good chance that her and I may have crossed paths at some point.
Okay, and are you, when you talked to Ben and he told you his memories and wrote to you about his memories of information that Heather had given him, because my understanding is that Heather and Ben are not in contact at this moment.
Right. I should say he dictated. It wasn't like she was staying over him saying it. He wrote down to the best of what she had described to him. As far as I know, they're not in contact, and because of the sensitivity, I think that if they were in contact, Ben wouldn't say anything anyways, which is very smart, because the information that's been released, even the information she released, that letter she sent to me, which I haven't made public, there's some sensitive stuff in there.
Okay.
And once people see the greater picture, when I start releasing everything from Project Seagate, my documents, my transcripts, absolute proof, that's going to be one thing to add to it that's really going to be a huge door buster.
Okay. What about the idea, couple things. Do you have any memories of being in undersea bases and or just underground bases in Florida?
I was in Miami for a while. I've had two people that remained completely anonymous who reside in Florida who have made claims that I was at an undersea base in Florida. I have another guy that's absolutely reliable. I'm not going to say his name, but he was with the military for 20 years, and him and I have discussed things in depth, and he was at AUTEC for quite some time. He was at Dulce Mountain. And he has accounted things that him and I have talked about that would lead me that at some point I was at Bimini Island, which has an underground facility. But I do have clear memories, absolutely, being of underground facilities in Oregon, Northern California, San Francisco Bay, and out in Arizona.
Okay. And what about, do you know anything about Sarasota?
Sarasota, Florida. No, but I have a list that I have compiled. I'll have to dig it out and I can get to you, but it's basically a list of all the known, state by state, of all the known underground facilities. I don't know if Sarasota's on there, but it might be.
Okay. Well, I was given recent information of a Stargate there.
Was this without revealing names? Was this of a certain person that I tried to get in contact with?
No,
Okay, this is not that person.
not to my knowledge.
Well, that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, you know, there was an interesting magnetic anomaly that occurred off of the Dominican Republic about a month ago that didn't make it on mainstream news. That was a Stargate-like opening that happened, and then also, and people can look at this. It's on. There have been radar images of specifically Australia, Norway, Russia, and other places with this unusual circular vortex thing. There's one in the United States now. Now, like of the Australia, it's this one. The one Nora, it's one. There's one in the United States now that has as a real image that there's 6 of them. And 2 of them are over Florida. These anomalies are popping up
One of
all over now.
the key areas of the Heather research was her discussion about working to create beings that could go in and out of portals and not be destroyed in the process.
And that's because these omega beings, these Solus beings, are not the most stable of beings. That's why. You know, they had, you can think of it as like they had a kind of a shelf life. And this relates back to the Gulf of Aden. There's an undersea facility there where there was this private research company. It was in articles, I have articles about it, where that French doctor, they claimed that she tried to kill herself, or she said the world must see it out, where they were doing alien human genetic experimentation, which they said was related directly to the Seagate. So there are multiple areas where they're doing this. I'm sure Heather was probably very much aware of that. So yeah, that's fact.
Okay.
Those things are happening.
And do you know anything about, this is kind of off in left field, but do you know anything about pharmaceutical companies and their black ops programs?
The pharmaceutical companies have been very much involved in that. Not pharmaceutical companies can't necessarily get a hold of certain rare plants that create certain kinds of proper chemicals. So they'll send in a team to, you know, either persuade or gather, even grabbing. Because black ops isn't just kidnapping people and killing. It's also gathering intel. It is falsifying intel. It's espionage of some means. It can even be, well, tampering with the government so the government falls. I mean, black ops have been doing that. That's how Saddam Hussein became. It's what just happened with the entire Polish government. If anyone thinks that was an accident, I'm sorry. That was a false flag operation. They were executed for a multitude of reasons. We'd get into that another time. One of the things I've been researching.
Okay.
But let me just ask you this. What specifically are you referring to as far as pharmaceuticals? Because they are a corrupt, really military industrialized complex.
Well, part of the Heather material was that she was working in a black ops portion of one of the pharmaceutical companies underground in Florida.
You know, when I first read the Heather document, it brought me back to something we were talking about on the way here of Project 13, which is the manipulation and enhancements and modifications of the 13th chromosome.
With autism.
Autism, Asperger's, multiple personality disorder, bipolar, ADD, ADHD, all these things derive from the 13th chromosome, which makes up of like 4.5, it's either 4.5 or 5.7, I have the numbers at home, of the entire DNA strand. It is the smallest, but in all reality, one of the most important.
Right, and you and I were talking about basically that a lot of autism is occurring right now around the globe, and that this is being manufactured by black ops programs.
The pharmaceutical companies have a huge hand in it.
And part of that is to create precogs, because autistic children have not only are they extra, telepathic, but they are also able to have powers that have to do with seeing the future, and that was something, and that is an ongoing program that the government is always using.
And like I said, some of them are actually not necessarily carry the soul of a human. A lot of these autistic kids and some Asperger's are being born, and it is actually the soul, the energy, the life force of an extraterrestrial being. A lot of them being Syrian, actually. This is why autistic children work so well with dolphins, because they are on the same communication level. They are totally in sync.
Yes, and there also seems to be a plot surrounding autism that you and I talked about that has to do with what appears to be, comparing notes here, the 13th chromosome taking humanity, and actually what happens is throwing into humanity, in the mix of humanity, these autistic children that will raise the vibration and change. They actually will jump humanity to another level. And this is the objective here. And they're being, in a sense, they're being used, sacrificed, whatever you want to call it, created in order to be triggers for this process.
And this is why, and just based on you telling me that, let's compare another note. The global elite, for a long time, the reason why they allow these slaughters to happen of dolphins and whales. Dolphins and whales both serve two separate but very significant purposes. One is, you could say, maintaining the frequency of the planet, and the other one holds an energy balance. It sounds similar, but they're a little bit different. Whales hold like a kind of a frequency. They maintain a frequency. Dolphins maintain the energy balance. They have been allowed to be killed for so long because if their numbers get too large, it will actually cause a frequency shift within humans. So they've suppressed at that level. So them in turn doing this with autistic children and Asperger's children is because it's on their terms, not the terms of the dolphins and the whales, which are sentient beings that really came here from another world. Their history is quite a lot more than what.
Isn't it
modern
possible,
science says.
though, also that the sacrificed dolphin and whales? This is just, and now we're going into the world of conjecture. Okay.
Yes.
So I will say that outright. But the idea is that you have soulless beings. If you have a dolphin or a whale that dies, if you capture their essence or their soul, then you can put that into one of those beings and have an ongoing consciousness.
Yes, you could. You could. In fact, sometimes that actually occurs naturally, and that's where you get these autistic children that actually, and I say Syrian, but I'm talking more of the soul of a dolphin, which is really the soul of a Syrian. This is something that, again, like you said, this could be a whole nother topic. This could be a whole nother interview. Me knowing the history of dolphins and why we worked with them at Pro-C, and I could do 2 hours on just that. But what I'm getting at is, it happens naturally. It is, and it's happening more and more and more. In fact, in Cirrus, in the origin of where dolphins come, there's been this wave of Cirrus, of souls from there that are on that energy level of dolphins that have been coming here and embodying into humans. There's a little known species that are called the Nomos. I'm not sure if you're aware of them. You are. I should have figured.
No, I just think that I've heard of them.
The Nomos have had a big play. The Nomos prefer, they are kind of an energy type being that prefer taking the bodies of humans and dolphins that are from Sirius B.
And
the Dogon tribe of Western Sahara, they've known about this for thousands of years.
Okay. All right, so let's wrap this up because it has been going on a while, even though it's tantalizing to keep going for hours and hours. But so that we can basically tie this up in sort of a cohesive way, what is it that you want to say here? Because you're basically on a quest of some kind to discover who it is you are, and at the same time to reveal what the government, what the black projects have been doing, and what they're all about. Is there anything that you can say in terms of the future of the planet going forward to 2012 and beyond, that the purpose behind some of these programs might begin to reveal? And if it's still something that you're, investigating, then, by all means say that. But
okay, it's a working process. Unfortunately, I do consider myself, like others said, that I'm so young, because that just means I have so much more ahead to look into. I'm still on this mission to reveal the totality of who I am and why I became this way, why I was chosen, and why the outside influences, malevolent and benevolent, are at this. I'm in this tug of war. I get pulled from side to side. A few whistleblowers have said it really well, and I say it too. In order for us to really get things more exposed, more people that were part of these projects need to come forward, men and women. Yes, the danger's out there, but strength is truly in numbers. I want people also to understand that a lot of the information I share is, I guess, scary, a little out of this world, but it's not by any means to invoke fear. It's to educate, because education and knowledge is infectious, and it can be infectious in a good way. Once that knowledge expands out, you never know. This interview right now, it may not hit anybody, but if one person watches it and it causes one little trigger and they realize, oh my gosh, these visions I had are real, then I've in turn helped someone else, which in turn helps build the collective consciousness. So let me just say this real quick. And Alex Collier says this too, so I'm not the only one. To sit around in your chair and pray to God and say, God, please help civilization, we need help, that's not the way you do it. Until enough people on this planet show that they are wanting the truth exposed, that they're wanting enlightenment, that they're wanting to have this be the world that it was at one time, the collective consciousness needs to be built. Once that happens, yes, we have friends that are up in space that will come down and work with us. They're not going to help us. They're not going to come here and rescue us. It is up to us. So I will continue to research, I will continue to expose, I will continue to work on myself, which will in turn help expose more, and keep working with all the other whistleblowers that I'm connected with, and with Project Camelot, because that doesn't just benefit me, and it is healing. This is a healing process, but it also helps others, which is a healing process as well.
Okay, and one last question, which is, why do you think that they've left you alone at this point?
Well, they haven't completely left me alone, but it hasn't been as harsh as it was the past couple of years. I can only speculate that perhaps they have been told by an outside influence to leave me the hell alone. That's really the only thing that would make sense to me. That there is this race of beings that I mentioned earlier, or perhaps someone else that has said, if you mess with them, you're going to suffer some consequences. Because I have been very much put into a protective field now, recently.
Okay.
In fact, I didn't mention, but those 2 times of missing time last week, I'm not saying that those were bad. Mm-hmm. That could have been something for a good reason. But I haven't woken up with any scars, marks, burns, chem marks, anything bad in over a month.
Okay.
So that's good.
Okay, Aaron Mccollum, thank you very much for coming forward.
Thanks,
for your
Gary.
courage. I really appreciate your service to humanity.
Well, and I appreciate yours and all the other people out there, and I appreciate when they listen to this. We just have to keep pressing on.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.